Hello there, I'm Greg, and this is Midnight Oil Software, where I talk about game development using Unity and also digital art. Thank you for joining me on my lunch break as I live stream development of my Ninja Eggs game. I'm working on a Moon Patrol remake that I'm adding as a mini game to it. And I'm going to be working today on tweaking the difficulty level of the game. In earlier streams, I've added some different types of hazards. You've got some landmines, which I just added in a previous stream. I've got hills and boulders that you have to jump over. And I've got turrets that shoot at you. And I have some pterodactyls that fly in and drop bombs. And so what I wanted to do today is currently every type of hazard can show up from the very beginning of the game. And so in order to make the game get a little bit more difficult progressively, I want to limit certain ones to only appear after the player's completed a certain number of milestones. So anyway, I'm going to switch over to Unity and kind of just show you what I've got to this point. The game is very hard initially because of the aforementioned reasons. So right there I had a pterodactyl flying above me, I had a turret in front of me, and I got killed almost immediately while trying to jump over a crater. So I think you can see there's opportunity to make this a little more scalable in difficulty. I'm hoping that volume is okay, the background volume mixed with my voice. I might turn that down just a tad. Oop. So there we go. So how do I want to do this? Now I've been racking my brain for a good name for the component I want to add to the hazards and the enemies. And it occurred to me that what I'm really adding is a filter. So I think I'm going to create a component and I'm going to call it MilestoneFilter because I'm filtering it by milestones. And in the future, I might filter it by some additional things so I could possibly make it a little more generic, but I'm going to stick with the YAGNI principle. YAGNI is an acronym which means you aren't going to need it. And I'm just going to call it a milestone filter for now. And if I need to change it in the future, I can always change it in the future. So I'm going to start by creating a C# script. And I'm going to call this, oops, got my caps lock on. Pull my microphone down here a little bit. Let's see, where was I? MilestoneFilter. Going to open that up in Visual Studio, and like always, I want to refactor that namespace. Okay. So what am I going to want in here? I know I'm going to want to have, so I was thinking I could have some checkboxes like include on range of milestones, in which case I would give it a collection or a beginning and an end milestone. Or I could just have a beginning and end milestone, and then if it's -1, that's not really descriptive. Well, I could put a header there. Say something like -1 is there is no minimum, or just 0. I could also have it where it only shows up within a specific set of milestones, in which case I'd take a collection. I think for now I'm just going to start with a minimum milestone. I'm going to start simple, and if I need to expand this, I can. So I'm going to create a serialized field. I'm going to make it an integer, and I'll call it first milestone. And by default, it will be 0. So if you haven't completed any milestones, this object can show up. and I'll make a public property. And that's basically the same thing as if this was a public getter with a private setter, but I want this to be set in the inspector. All right, so I'm going to come out here. I'm going to go to my hazards. And right now, my hazards, they all implement basically a scrolling. Let's find it. Egg Patrol, Boulder. Well, they implement destructible. And then the turret also has a turret script. I think I could either just drag that milestone filter on each one. I think that's what I'll do. I was thinking I could give them a common base class that has that thing, but really, I think what I want to do is every hazard type plus the enemy type will take that milestone filter script. And by default, it will be 0. So boulder and hill, that's fine. They can show up on 0. But I don't want the landmines to show up until they've completed at least 2. And I don't want the turret to show up until they've completed at least 3. And then the pterodactyl can start showing up after you've completed 4. I think that's how I want to start out with. And this is all changeable in the inspector, so I can, of course, tweak it to improve my gameplay. All right, so now I need to look at my terrain manager, because that's where I'm spawning the hazards. And I've got a method in here, can spawn hazard, well, should spawn hazard. And this is where I believe I'm going to handle this. So actually, there's a couple things I want to do. I want to have a collection. I've already got a collection of hazard prefabs, but I also want to maintain a collection of milestone filters. I'll say spawnable hazards. Actually, I'm going to go ahead and populate that in a function. And this method is going to look at it's going to filter the list of prefabs. I'm basically going to get the list of milestone filters for those prefabs. And I'm going to filter it by however many milestones have been completed by looking at the level controller. And I'm going to end up adding an event to the level controller. So every time a prefab or every time a milestone is completed, it'll fire that event and I can update this collection. So I'll initially populate it. I'm actually probably going to initially populate it in on enable. Here I'm just going to instantiate it. I'm going to move this a little farther down. And all this stuff is going to be refactored out into a hazard spawner class. when I do my refactoring video, my refactoring stream, I'm going to do some solid, clean code refactoring. And the first letter in the acronym SOLID, of course, is single responsibility pattern. So this terrain manager really shouldn't be concerned with what hazards can be spawned. Okay, let's see. First thing I'll do is spawnable hazards clear for each game object in hazard prefabs. If get component MilestoneFilter first milestone is less than or equal to level controller do I have a property for that? I don't think so. All right, level controller dot milestones completed and I just realized this should be a collection of game objects. Just like that. It's just filtered by the milestone filter. And that's going to have to return. Well, that can be a void since it is a private member. Maybe when I refactor it out. Okay, void. So this should create a collection of hazards that can be spawned based on how many milestones we've completed. Just want to clean this up a little bit. That looks pretty good. So now, get hazard type. Should only give me hazards that are appropriate based on the milestones that I've completed. Let's give this a shot, shall we? Hit play. I'm currently not filtering the pterodactyls. I just have a delay for when they can appear. I did not get any hazards, and I don't know if that's because I have a bug or I just didn't meet the random chance of spawning a hazard. So let me go ahead. You know what? Am I actually... So I am calling that an on-enable. but I will never update it at this point. But initially, I should only have 2 spawnable hazards. I should have boulder and hill. Let's give that a shot, see what happens. I should have hit that breakpoint immediately, and I did not, because I did not attach the debugger, I believe. Okay, get spawnable hazards. For each game object, so there's 4. I get the filter. So this first one is for a boulder. So I'll add the boulder. This one is for the hill, so I'm adding the hill. So this one was for the turret, and we're not adding that one. And this one is for the landmine. We're not adding that one. Okay, so I have 2 spawnable hazards, the boulder and the hill. So when I come into get hazard type, well, at least I know I'm populating that thing correctly. Let me go back and look at my should spawn hazard. Just going to collapse some of these things, get them out of my way. So in spawn terrain, every time I spawn a terrain tile, I call if should spawn hazard, and I'm passing it in whether or not I can spawn hazards. And that is totally, I believe, based on whether this is initial terrain or new terrain. So let me look at should spawn hazard. So if I can't spawn hazards, or this is not normal terrain, I don't want to spawn a hazard in a crater, I return false. If my countdown hasn't expired, I return false. If my active enemies, if there's active enemies on the board, like pterodactyls flying around, I return false. Otherwise, I roll a percentile dice from 1 to 100, and if that is greater than or equal to the hazard chance, so if I have 25% and I roll greater than 25, I return false. Otherwise, I return true. So, am I counting down my countdown anywhere? Yes, in update, I am counting down, removing time that delta time from it. So that is definitely happening. Maybe I just never rolled the right percentile dice. I should turn them off until I add the logic to prevent them from spawning until later. There we go. Should spawn hazard. spawn hazard, get hazard type. So I'm going to get spawnable hazard at index 1, which should be a boulder. All right. There it is. Okay, so I got a boulder that seems to be working. Let's move over to the enemy spawner. And so it's going to have a collection of enemies to spawn. I can't wait to add more enemies. If you all have any ideas of fun enemies that I could add, paste something in the chat. And I will see if I can't get them implemented. So I'm going to do the same thing in here that I did for the hazards. I'm going to have a collection of game objects called spawnable enemies. Probably got to come up with a better name than that. In a wake, initialize that, on enable, get spawnable enemies. Okay. All right. So now, spawn enemies. That is inclusive. So from 0 to count minus 1. Now that's interesting, because that says it's exclusive. Oh, exclusive. So that's exclusive. And that says, oh, inclusive, max exclusive. All right. I'm just going to refactor that property, which I've already got, to use spawnable enemies. There we go. So I should not see any pterodactyls until I've completed 4 milestones. I'm also going to add logic to increase these percentages as I complete milestones, but not quite yet. Before I do that, I want to add the event to the level controller to let subscribers know when milestones have been completed. Well, there's no point testing this because I will never, ever spawn a pterodactyl because I'm not repopulating that list. I can just test the initial piece. Just to verify that this is going to have nothing in it. Yep. No elements. So I will not be spawning any pterodactyls. Okay, let's work on the mini game level controller. I think I just want to add a public event. Just trying to figure out where I want to put it. Did I want to call invoke? I do this sort of thing. When I only do these things once in a while, I have to go look up how I did it. So I know I have a scriptable object. For my UI. Public event, action. Public event action. Let me give that a shot here. system. What does it not like about that? Oh, there we go. Public. Did I capitalize it? Yep, I capitalized it. Alrighty. Yep, invoke. That's what I thought. All right, so with the null interpolator, it will only call this method if this is not null, meaning someone has subscribed to it. So in the TerrainManager, on enable, after I get my spawnable hazards, I'm going to say level dot milestones completed plus equals on milestone completed. Yeah, that is right. It doesn't want to generate a... It wants to generate a field. I'm just going to say void on milestone completed get spawnable hazards. In fact, so, I mean, in the future, I might want to do more when a milestone is completed. But for now, all I want to do is get spawnable hazards. Why is that not working? Void get spawnable hazards. Oh, it's read only. I'm looking at the interface. All right, and then an on disable. You always want to unsubscribe from your events when you're not using them anymore. Okay. So get spawnable hazards. I just want to log out when I'm calling that so I know that it's working. Let's see. And in the enemy spawner, same deal. And I'm going to do the same thing. I want to log out a message. Go back into Unity. Show my console. See if I can stay alive long enough to see this work. But if I want to see my console, I need to turn off maximize on play on the game window. Ooh, I see an error here. Definitely want to fix that error. It's in the enemy spawner. Ah! All right, so first thing I want to do is get the type of enemy I want to spawn. If it's null, return. That means I can't spawn any. I want to determine how many of those enemies I want to spawn. And then I'll reset my delay so that I won't spawn any more until that delay expires. And then I go ahead and I loop through my count of enemies to spawn and spawn that many of those enemy prefabs. That should work. Okay, I got a boulder. Completed a milestone. It does not look like I updated the list of spawnable hazards. Still just getting boulders. So I'm a little concerned that I didn't update my list of spawnable hazards as I completed milestones. So I added that to the base class, increment milestone progress. But of course, my Egg Patrol Manager is the one that's actually being called. Increment milestone. Ah, okay. I want to make sure I call the base class and then do my custom stuff down here. So I've called it once initially. And it looks like I called it again. Looks like I called it again. Toggle active repeating. Why am I calling this? Oh, that must be the flashing light on my landmine. Oh, boom! I hit the landmine. I got distracted by that breakpoint. Well, that was definitely working. I initially only got boulders and hills, and then I finally got to the point that I got a landmine. Let's try that again and see if I can't get to the point where I get turrets and pterodactyls. So it starts off pretty easy with just the limited... Ah! I spoke too soon. I was going to say it starts off pretty easy with just the limited hazards. Landmine! Boom! Man, that's tricky when they're that close to a crater. I don't know if you can hear my dog snoring behind me. I noticed that there's a little bit of a hiccup when it first puts up that milestone text. I don't know if that would happen outside of the environment. Oh, did I hit the edge of the crater? It's definitely a challenging game, I'll give it that. I'm sure y'all are just loving watching me crash into things. I think one thing I was thinking with the... So I got landmines, turrets, hills, and boulders. So boulders are set at 0. Hills are set at 0. I think I set landmines to 2. I think I want to leave them at 2, but make turrets 1. And make pterodactyls 3. So they start showing up sooner. And turrets will show up before landmines. Because I actually think the landmines are more challenging. There's a turret. And there's a pterodactyl. Boom. Never did see a landmine, but that just means I just didn't get that random chance. I'm going to play around with the crater chance here. I think there's too many craters initially. And maybe even too many hazards initially. And I think the next thing I'm going to work on is incrementing that as you complete milestones. Just to make it get progressively harder and harder. And I'm going to go ahead and maximize this now that I'm not worried about my console. In fact, I'm going to take those console log statements out. Yeah, so fewer craters and hazards makes it a little bit easier in the very beginning here. Man. I might have to put some other filter in there for not showing up so close to a crater. Whoa! For some reason, it got way faster. I know I put logic in there to increase the speed as I complete milestones, but that seemed like a very abrupt scroll speed change. So I know I'm taking my scroll speed plus my adjustment, and I have an amount to increase per milestone times the number of milestones completed. And that's another thing that I can make an event It's not essential, but because it's just a float value. I'm going to have to keep an eye on that. That was very strange. I want to keep an eye on that. Getting toward the end of my lunch break here. Got it. I meant to shoot, not jump. I might as well do this. So I'm going to add well, I'm only going to use this in here. Do I even use this? No. That's vestigial. Okay. Poodoo. All right, well, it's working. I think that's a good place to stop for today. All right, so I think I made some pretty good progress today. I've got it so the different types of hazards come in gradually as the player advances in milestones. So it starts off not too hard and then gets progressively harder. The craters and hazards will begin to appear in greater and greater frequency as they advance in milestones, and it gets faster and faster, of course. So anyway, I appreciate anybody that might have tuned in to watch, or anybody that's watching this online after the fact. If you found this helpful, please click that like and subscribe button. And if you'd like to be notified when I post another video or go live, click that notification icon. Thanks again for watching and have a great day.